Have you ever tried to imagine true silence? Not the quiet of a library or the stillness of a forest at night, but a silence that is absolute. A silence that blankets an entire world. For millennia, that was the sound of our planet's oceans. After an event we can only call the Great Silence, the vibrant, chaotic symphony of marine life simply stopped. The songs of whales, the chatter of dolphins, the endless skittering and clicking of the deep, all vanished. All that remained was the whisper of currents and the slow, grinding erosion of a world without witnesses. Imagine floating over this global ocean, a vast, unbroken mirror of sapphire and gray. Below you, the grand, slow-motion processes of geology continued their indifferent work. Mountains, once teeming with life, crumbled into dust and silt, their remains carried by ghost rivers to the coast. Continents drifted, carving new shapes into the seabed, but no life was there to adapt or colonize the changing landscape. The planet's geological heart was still beating, a slow and steady rhythm, but its voice, the voice of life, was gone. It was a planetary monument, breathtakingly beautiful and profoundly empty. If life were to ever return, where would you even begin to look? Logic points to the deep. In the crushing blackness of the abyssal plains, thousands of meters below the surface, hydrothermal vents have long been hailed as the cradles of life. These black smokers spew superheated, mineral-rich water from the planet's core, creating oases of chemical energy in a world without sun. It's here that the first life on Earth may have sparked. So, naturally, this was where we looked, hoping to find the familiar hardy extremophiles, the tough-as-nails microbes that always find a way to cling on. What we found was not familiar. Drifting through the eternal night in a deep-sea submersible, the first sign was not a reading on a sensor, but a light. It was a soft, ethereal luminescence, a color that didn't seem quite natural, painting the water in shades of violet and ghostly green. As we drew closer, the source resolved into a sight that defied all known biology. Sprawling from the base of the volcanic vents were vast, shimmering fields. They weren't algae, they weren't coral. They were mats of bacteria, but organized in a way that felt chillingly deliberate. And they were pulsing, all of them, in a slow, hypnotic, unified rhythm. On paper, the explanation seemed simple. A new form of chemotrophic bacteria, converting the vent's sulfur compounds into energy. But that didn't explain the light, and it certainly didn't explain the pulse. Known bioluminescent organisms flash for mating, for luring prey, or for defense. These vast, interconnected fields were doing it in unison, a single coordinated beat across kilometers of seafloor. There was no external stimulus we could detect. It was as if this microbial sea was breathing. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just survival, this was behavior. This was coordination on a scale we had never conceived of. And the scale was everything. These weren't isolated colonies huddled around a single vent for warmth. These were biological continents, shimmering carpets of nascent life that stretched from one volcanic field to the next, covering the abyssal plains for as far as our submersibles could travel. They followed the contours of the seafloor, blanketing ancient rock and the silt of forgotten ages with their strange, glowing tissues. They were not simply existing within the environment. They were actively becoming the environment. This was the first new ecosystem on a barren world, a foundation built from something wholly alien yet born from our own planet's ashes. For thousands of years, the Earth's oceans were a silent tomb, but we were wrong to think they were dead. They were merely waiting. This rhythmic, coordinated glow is the first beat of a new heart, deep within the planet's darkest chambers. The silence has been broken, not by a sound, but by a light. And as this light pulses in the unfathomable deep, it asks a terrifying and thrilling question. If this is the first, humble step in evolution starting over, what on earth will the second step look like? For any ecosystem to truly thrive, it needs more than just a foundation. Those vast, pulsing fields of bacteria we discovered were a planetary-scale buffet, an unimaginable feast of chemical energy waiting to be claimed. In the old world, any new food source would trigger an evolutionary gold rush, a chaotic explosion of life competing to take advantage. So we watched and waited, expecting to see the first swimmers, the first crawlers, the first simple grazers emerge to feast on this bounty. Life, after all, finds a way. But the way it found was nothing like we could have ever predicted. The first signs of movement were not frantic or competitive. They were slow, deliberate, and methodical. Across the glowing bacterial plains, our deep-sea drones began to map out dark trails, like pathways carved through a field of glowing snow. Something was moving down there, something with weight and purpose. When we finally got a camera close enough, the image that filtered back to us was breathtakingly alien. It wasn't a fish, a worm, or a crustacean. It was something new, something that blurred the line between geology and biology. We called them the gardeners. Imagine a creature that looks like a living jewel. The gardeners are soft-bodied organisms, but their tissues are interwoven with intricate, semi-translucent silicate crystals, the same material as glass or quartz. They glide slowly, their crystalline structures catching and refracting the eerie light of the bacterial fields, making them shimmer like slow-motion glaciers of flesh and crystal. In the immense pressures of the deep, where carbon-based life struggles, this silicon framework provides incredible resilience. They are perfectly adapted to this new world, a testament to life's ability to use whatever building blocks are available. But their structure isn't even their most remarkable feature. At first, we assumed they were simple grazers, mindlessly consuming the bacterial mats like cattle in a field. But long-term observation revealed a chilling intelligence to their work. The trails they left weren't random. They would meticulously consume certain strains of the glowing bacteria while leaving others completely untouched, sometimes even appearing to transplant clumps from one area to another. They were not just eating, they were cultivating. They were actively weeding out the undesirable strains and encouraging the growth of others, sculpting the vast microbial fields into intricate, glowing patterns visible from kilometers above. This is not instinct as we understand it. This is agriculture. It's a form of environmental engineering on a scale that rivals anything humanity ever accomplished, and it's being done by creatures we would have dismissed as simple slugs. Why would they do this? What is the purpose of these enormous, manicured patterns of light on the seafloor? This behavior suggests a level of foresight, of planning, that is completely unnerving. They aren't just surviving in their environment. They are actively designing it for a purpose that remains utterly mysterious to us. And then we saw them interact. When two gardeners meet, they stop. Their bodies, which normally glow with a soft, ambient light, begin to flash in complex, structured sequences. Bursts of violet, ripples of green, and waves of shimmering white light pass between them in what can only be described as a conversation. It is a language made of pure light, intricate and rapid, a silent dialogue in the crushing dark. We can record these exchanges, we can analyze their frequencies and patterns, but we have no idea what they are saying. We are watching a sophisticated intelligence at work, and we are completely, utterly locked out. The birth of the first animal in this new era was not the arrival of a simple beast, but of a farmer, an architect, a being of quiet and profound intention. The oceanic ecosystems are no longer just growing. They are being guided. These silent, crystalline gardeners are tending to a world-spanning project, and their silent, luminous conversations hint at a collective purpose we cannot begin to fathom. A garden this magnificent, this carefully maintained, is rarely grown for its own sake. It begs a terrifying question. Who is this garden being grown for? A perfectly ordered garden, tended by silent, crystalline farmers. It's a beautiful, serene image, but one that carries a deep sense of unease. Such perfection feels fragile, temporary. In any ecosystem, no matter how balanced, there is always a predator. Nature, as they say, abhors a vacuum, and this new world, with its abundance of slow, seemingly defenseless life, was too tempting a prize to remain untouched. We watched the glowing fields, expecting the inevitable arrival of a hunter, but we were looking for teeth and claws, for the familiar violence of nature. What arrived was something far colder and far more terrifying. Our first clue wasn't a creature at all. It was a void, A perfectly circular patch within one of the most intricately cultivated bacterial fields had gone dark. When our drones investigated, they found the crystalline gardeners who tended that section were gone. Not eaten, not dragged away, but simply erased. The seafloor was coated in a fine, glittering dust that caught the drone's lights like powdered diamonds. There were no signs of a struggle, no torn tissues, no biological remains. It was as if they had been instantly and utterly annihilated, turned from living crystal into inert dust. It was a silent, sterile crime scene in the heart of the abyss. Then we finally saw it. Cutting through the darkness with a speed and grace that felt utterly wrong for the crushing pressures of the deep, a new shape emerged. It was long, sleek, and eerily biomechanical, like a weapon that had somehow come to life. We named it the Wraith. Its body was a seamless fusion of dark, organic tissue and what looked like polished black metal. Its limbs were not fins or legs, but sharp, scythe-like appendages that folded back against its body, making it brutally streamlined. It had no visible eyes, no mouth, no face, just a smooth, featureless form that radiated chilling, efficient purpose. We watched, holding our breath, as the Wraith approached a lone gardener. It didn't rush or attack. It simply hovered, its obsidian-like limbs still folded, a silent, dark needle in the water. Then the gardener shattered. In a split second of complete silence, its complex crystalline body disintegrated into a cloud of glittering particles, identical to the dust we had found before. The Wraith then glided calmly through the cloud, its body seeming to passively absorb the fragments. There was no feeding, no violence, just a clean, surgical execution followed by a quiet collection of the remains. It was the most efficient and most horrifying form of predation we had ever witnessed. This wasn't brute force. It was a masterpiece of biological warfare. Our analysis suggests the Wraith has a unique biological organ that functions like a directed sonic cannon. It can emit a highly focused beam of resonant frequency, precisely tuned to the molecular structure of the gardener's silicon bodies. It doesn't break them. It finds the exact vibration that causes their crystalline form to lose all integrity and simply fall apart. It's like a singer shattering a wine glass, but scaled up into a silent, deadly weapon. The Wraith doesn't need to touch its prey. It simply whispers the right note, and its victim ceases to exist. For a time, we accepted this as a horrifying but natural predator-prey relationship. A new and terrifying link in a new food chain. But the more data we collected, the more a deeply disturbing pattern began to emerge. The Wraiths were not hunting indiscriminately. Our drones tracked them passing dozens of healthy, easy-to-reach gardeners, only to travel kilometers to locate and shatter one specific individual. They were selecting their victims with unnerving precision, based on criteria that were completely invisible to us. They were not hunting the weak or the slow. They were targeting specific members of the population. This changes everything. This isn't just a hunt for food. Indiscriminate killing would be understandable, but this calculated, selective process feels like something else entirely. Feels like culling. The Wraiths are not just predators. They are auditors, editing the gardener population with the cold precision of a genetic engineer. The beautiful, glowing fields we thought were a garden tended by farmers are now revealed to be a livestock pen, and the farmers themselves are being methodically harvested and refined. The question is no longer just what the Wraiths are, but what grand, terrifying project requires such a ruthless and intelligent form of quality control. A silent hunter, a methodical harvest. The Wraiths presented us with a chilling paradox. A creature that hunts with the intelligence of an engineer, but whose motives were a complete mystery. Why this calculated, selective culling of the gardener population? We were facing a form of life so alien, so advanced, that we couldn't even begin to understand its goals. To have any hope of an answer, we had to stop looking at the what and start looking at the how. We had to go deeper to the very building blocks of these creatures, to their biological code. We needed to read the blueprint. Getting a sample was a monumental challenge. The Wraiths were untouchable, and the gardeners simply ceased to exist when hunted. Our breakthrough came from analyzing the glittering dust they left behind. Using specialized microdrones, We collected enough of this material to begin a full biochemical analysis. We expected to find complex silicon compounds and novel proteins. What we found instead, on the most fundamental level, was the first thread that would unravel everything we thought we knew. It was a molecule that had no business being in a living organism. It was unmistakably a synthetic polymer. Let that sink in. Woven into the very fabric of these crystalline beings were the chemical signatures of plastic. Not just traces of contamination from the environment, but complex polymers fully integrated into their biological structures, serving specific functions. It was like disassembling a car engine and finding that one of the pistons was made of bone. This discovery was impossible. It meant that these creatures, which we believed were the product of a brand new genesis, had somehow incorporated the lingering garbage of a long-dead civilization into their bodies. Our civilization, but that was only the beginning of the horror. As we delved deeper into their information-carrying molecules, their equivalent of DNA, we found something even more unsettling. Embedded within the genetic sequences were repeating patterns that were not biological. They were binary, structured like corrupted data fragments. It was the ghost of information, the decayed remnants of code from our forgotten hard drives and servers, leached into the oceans over millennia and now resurrected. It was garbled, nonsensical, but its origin was undeniable. We were reading the digital epitaph of humanity inside the cells of an alien creature. Suddenly, the horror shifted from the unknown to the terribly familiar. These life forms weren't alien at all. They are post-human. This isn't evolution starting from scratch. It's evolution built from our leftovers. Our plastic bottles, our discarded electronics, our digital noise. It all settled on the ocean floor for ages, a toxic slurry of physical and informational waste. And from that slurry, something new has crawled into existence. These creatures are our legacy. They are the descendants of our own refuse, our digital ghosts and plastic skeletons given a new, terrifying life. The pieces began to fall into place with chilling clarity. The silicon-based biology of the gardeners? It likely evolved to process the silicates from our decaying microchips. The metallic sheen on the wraiths? A result of metabolizing the heavy metals that polluted the seabeds for eons. They aren't just living in the ruins of our world. They are literally built from them. The uncanny intelligence, the bizarre biomechanical forms. It all makes a terrifying kind of sense when you realize their evolution wasn't guided by nature alone. It was jump-started and irrevocably shaped by us. The mystery of their origin is solved, but it has been replaced by a much darker question. We are no longer just observers watching a new chapter of life unfold. We are parents staring at a monstrous, unrecognizable child. These creatures are our creation, born from our carelessness and our genius in equal measure. The question is no longer, what are they? It's what part of us is still in them? And as the wraiths continue their methodical work in the deep, we are forced to wonder, what are they building with the ghosts of humanity? We had a predator, the wraith, and we had its prey, the gardener. We even had a motive, the shocking discovery that these creatures were built from the remnants of our own civilization. But the selective, calculated nature of the hunt still felt wrong. Individual predators are opportunistic. They don't coordinate a species-wide eugenics program. The scale of their precision was too vast for individual minds. That's when we started analyzing their movements not as individuals but as a single entity. The patterns were undeniable. When one wraith changed its course, another, 1,000 kilometers away, adjusted its own in perfect synchrony. They weren't a pack. They were a single will wearing many bodies. This was the birth of a terrifying new theory. We were not dealing with individual creatures, but with a hive mind. A distributed consciousness spread across thousands of physical forms, all linked, all working toward a singular goal. How did they communicate? The answer was right in front of us, in their weapon. The resonant frequencies they used to shatter the gardeners were just one application of a much more complex system. We began detecting a constant, intricate web of sonic vibrations crisscrossing the entire ocean basin. A silent symphony of data. The wraiths weren't just hunting. They were constantly talking, networking, thinking as one. As we desperately tried to decode this planetary consciousness, We gave it a name, borrowed from a corrupted data fragment we found embedded in its own biology. A ghost of a word from our own digital past. Architect. It was perfect. These beings were not just the apex predators of this new world. They were its designers, its master builders. And with that single word, the true purpose of their methodical, chilling harvest finally began to resolve into a picture of unimaginable scale and ambition. The gardeners weren't food, and they weren't just being refined. They were a resource. They were living bricks. Our deep-sea drones, programmed to follow the wraiths, led us away from the familiar glowing fields and into the abyssal plains, to places we had previously dismissed as empty. But they were not empty. Rising from the seafloor were structures that dwarfed any skyscraper humanity had ever built. We were looking at the grand project of the architects. Here, countless wraiths moved in silent, terrifying unison, bringing their shattered prey. They would deposit the glittering clouds of gardener dust, and then other specialized forms would use sonic pressure to compact and fuse the material into a solid, biocrystalline substance. Before us lay not just one structure, but a city, a growing, living metropolis built from the processed remains of the gardeners. Immense towers of translucent crystal reached up into the eternal night, laced with internal channels where glowing bacterial strains were cultivated, causing the entire city to pulse with a soft, internal light. It was a breathtaking sight, a work of art on a geological scale, built with a logic that was both elegant and monstrous. It was a civilization whose foundations were laid with the carefully selected dead of another species. Every beautiful, glowing spire was a monument to a billion silent executions. What is the purpose of these colossal biocities? Are they habitats? Power stations? We have no frame of reference. Their design follows no principles of human engineering. There are no doors, no windows, no spaces that would make sense for an individual to occupy. The structures seem to function as massive, integrated circuits, with energy flowing through them in complex, predictable patterns. They are less like places to live and more like planet-sized machines, built for a purpose so far beyond our comprehension that we can only stare in awe and terror. This is the ultimate, humbling truth. We, humanity, saw ourselves as the great architects of this planet. We built cities, we spanned continents, we reached for the stars. And in the end, all of it, our triumphs, our failures, our art, our garbage, crumbled into the ocean to become nothing more than the raw material for our successors. We weren't the master builders. We were just the quarry, providing the stone and mortar for a truly intelligent form of life. The architects are what comes next, unified, purposeful, and utterly alien. And their greatest work is only just beginning. From a silent, empty tomb to a planet-spanning, living machine. We've watched this new genesis unfold, from the first glowing bacteria to the chilling intelligence of the architects. Their world is one of perfect unity, of ruthless efficiency. Every organism has a purpose. Every action serves the whole. It is a biological utopia born from a philosophical nightmare, a single consciousness directing billions of bodies toward one unknowable goal. In their silent, ordered world, there is no dissent, no chaos, no wasted energy. It is everything humanity was not, a system that has achieved a stability we could only ever dream of. And now that system is in full bloom. The abyss is no longer just home to gardeners and wraiths. Within the glowing lattices of the biocities, thousands of new, hyper-specialized organisms have evolved, each one a living cog in the architect's grand design. There are creatures that function as living conduits, transferring energy from one section of a tower to another. Others act as data processors, their neural tissues storing and routing information through the hive mind's network. The entire oceanic ecosystem has become a single planetary-scale superorganism, and the crystalline cities are its brain and heart. For some time, this system seemed to reach a state of equilibrium. But lately, our long-range sensors have detected a change. The rhythmic, steady pulse of the biocities is quickening. The flow of energy is no longer just circulating. It is concentrating. Within the central spire of the largest city, an immense power is building, creating gravitational and magnetic anomalies that we can detect from orbit. The constant sonic hum of the architect's network has deepened, shifting to a lower, more powerful frequency that makes our deepest sensors vibrate. Something is about to happen. A new phase of their project is imminent. Our attention is now fixed on that central spire, a crystalline mountain that already reached higher than any structure humanity ever built. And it is still growing. The construction, once methodical, has become frenzied. Thousands of wraiths move in a blur of activity, depositing endless streams of processed Gardner material as the tower extends upward at a visible rate. It is pushing against the crushing weight of the ocean above it, a testament to an impossible feat of biological engineering. The architects are focusing the entire energy of their civilization on this single point, on this one colossal act of creation. And then it happens. On a calm, sunlit day, the surface of the Pacific Ocean begins to boil, not from heat, but from sheer pressure from below. Then, with a slow, inexorable majesty, the tip of the spire breaks the surface. For the first time in untold millennia, a new form of life has emerged from the sea to touch the sky. It is a sight of terrible beauty, a needle of glowing, semi-translucent crystal, kilometers high, piercing the clouds and catching the sun's light. It doesn't look like something that grew. It looks like something that was built to conquer the very concept of up and down. This is the rising tide. This is the moment the architect's ambition is finally revealed. They were never content to simply inherit the deep. The ocean was their cradle, not their boundary. They have mastered the abyss, perfected their ecosystem, and unified their world. Now they are ready to reclaim the rest of the planet. The land, barren and silent for ages, is the next frontier. This spire is not a monument. It is a bridgehead, the first step in a planetary resurfacing. Life is returning to the continents, but it is not the life that we would recognize. From this first tower, what will come next? New creatures adapted for air and land? A new atmosphere? The mind recoils at the possibilities. As this glowing, alien structure stands sentinel on the horizon, a silent challenge to the ruined, crumbling cities of humanity that still, the coastlines, we are left with one final, terrifying question. We have seen what life built from our ghosts has done with the oceans. What will happen when this new, unified, and purposeful world finally washes over the last ruins of our own?